Also on neighborhood block parties, they would be prohibited on collector and arterial streets. Obviously, the reason is to keep them off the higher volume roadways. Consumption of alcohol would not be, consumption of alcohol in the right-of-way would be prohibited. That is called out specifically. That is the case throughout the system, whether you have a permit or not, but there's a bit of a tendency in block parties to want to bring the beer out because it's game day or whatever it may be. And so we wanted to make sure the policy stated that clearly, that consistent with city codes, that alcohol would not be permissible in those locations. Construction closures, again, this is kind of the bread and butter. We do a lot of these every day. We have set some limitations in here, 12 hours per day, 7 a.m. to dusk, but that extended and night closures are allowed with approval. The reason we wrote it that way is we were trying to encourage the folks that are out there doing construction closures to get in and get out if you can. Be as efficient as possible. Recognize that, again, you are disrupting traffic. If you go into nighttime, then it becomes more of an issue for safety and lighting and all those things. So if you can operate within a day, great. If you cannot, okay, we understand that. There's a lot of jobs that take multiple days or a week or whatever it may be, and so those kind of extended closures are permissible with approval up front. The approved traffic control devices would be the responsibility of the applicant, similar to the other situations. Okay, in the next section it talks about noncompliance and what would happen, and this is where we put a little bit of teeth into the policy. We've been fairly fortunate in that, probably 98% of the folks who have permits fully comply with the requirements, and they're very diligent about their traffic control, and they do good things. But there are some that do create some problems for us, and we've had situations where either somebody's closed the street without a permit when one is needed, or they've failed to put up the appropriate traffic control. You get the couple of fold-up tables that are out across the streets and rather than appropriate signage. What do you do in those cases? And so the way we have put this together is that with the applicant would be given a reasonable opportunity to remedy the situation. So typically it's the police department that would come out and say, you have a permit, yes, okay, where's your traffic control? Well, it's not up to speed, and so therefore you need to take care of this. If they do, great, life's good, proceed, go on your merry way. If they don't, then the city would have the ability to revoke the permit. In some cases that would seem like, well, what's the effect? I mean, it's a one-time event, it's almost over, oh, your permit's gone, end of story, and who cares, right? Well, in order to carry it beyond that, we put a provision in here that said that if you have your permit revoked for failure to follow the provisions of the permit itself, you would not be allowed to get another permit for a period of 1 year. After that year, you can apply again and get permits. If you were to offend again, so within a 2-year span of the original offense, then you would be prohibited from permits for that purpose for a period of 5 years. That's a fairly long time, but the idea here is to convey the message that we go through a permitting process for a reason. There are safety considerations. Again, we're trying to be fair and equitable to everybody. So if somebody's choosing not to do it and skirts through the process, there needs to be some form of repercussion for that. So that's the way it's written. If the council desires to do something different, we can certainly make modifications. One other item that's in here, and it's right towards the end of the policy, it's on the last page, section 6, and it's highlighted in yellow. Well, that last paragraph, the last sentence is highlighted in yellow. The paragraph says that provision of right-of-way permits for community event and for neighborhood block party closures shall be limited to events open to the general public, first point, open to the general public, and that are not intended for direct commercial gain by the applicant or associated parties. Now, this is speaking really directly to two things, but the primary one being those community event situations. Somebody wants to close Main Street, and if their intent is to bring their store materials out into the middle of the street and set up tables and sell things, that would not be something that we would want to see under this policy. If the intent is to have an event and invite the public in, and oh, by the way, everybody around you, all those businesses, see a commercial gain because it's an ancillary side effect that, yeah, you've got more people downtown enjoying the music and they wander into your store, that's great. Absolutely great. So the idea here was to say that if it's specific to a commercial gain of an entity or an applicant, that we would not allow that as a provision of the policy. In block parties, it's similar in that regard. Where I think we might see it in the block party or local neighborhood closures really is the aspect of doing yard sales in the street. If you want to do a yard sale in your cul-de-sac, great, everybody put it out in the yard and, advertise it, and you leave parking in the street and have your yard sale. But to actually go out into the street and close it for the purpose of commercial sales, well, in this case, private sales, but commercial gain, monetary gain, that's why we wrote it in that way. So, again, that's something that I wanted the council to be aware of. It has the potential to become an issue in certain things downtown. If the Chamber of Commerce is promoting an event that includes sales out on the sidewalk, how does that fit in? Okay. Now, it's not necessarily a street closure, so it wouldn't be permitted. Right? But there's a little bit of a fuzzy line in there, so we just have to be cognizant of that and think about how that applies. The way this is written as a policy would say that if there's direct commercial gain to the applicant or their associated parties, that was not something we would permit. Okay, that's it. So, any questions? that I can
Well,
answer?
Dan, hang on just a second, John. Dan, on March the 9th, this was in front of the admin.
It was, and, Les went through the fee schedule thing. Tyler had explained that to us, how they came up with that schedule based on the actual costs of closing the streets and things like that. Hoping, and like Les said, hoping to recover those setup and takedown costs. And then also there's basically those three things were the reason we brought it to full council was the fee schedule, which will come to us later, the either release of liability or insurance for the block parties, and then that last sentence there about the
Commercial gain.
that last paragraph about the financial gain. And I had a question about that, Les. Say I'm having a block party to try and raise some money for leukemia research or something like that. Would that be, maybe it's a Rod question there, would that be for financial gain, or since, I'm doing it for charity, is that something different?
I think you'd characterize that, council, as a charity event, and I don't think that would be a personal economic benefit.
So it's kind of more like how Mardi Gras is trying to raise funds for the
Some costs.
the youth stuff there.
And we do see those.
That was the intent of the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 2 or 3 a year events. It's either a dance or a block party of some kind to raise funds. Sometimes it's near campus. So we do see those, and I would agree. I would not see that as a direct commercial gain. I'd see that as a charity supporting event.
Okay. Hey, John, you had a question?
Yeah, according to what you said, correct me if I'm wrong, but for 26 weeks of the year, 24 to 26, 27, when the farmer's market is open, there's only going to be one Saturday that there could be a parade?
As far as the time of day that the market is open on Main Street, that is the provision that is here. So while the market is in operation until 1 p.m., that there would not be a parade during that time frame. A parade later in the day is a possibility.
And you've also put in here that are not intended for direct commercial gain by the applicant. Isn't that what the farmer's market is for? Direct commercial gain?
The farmer's market application is filed by the city, and there's no direct commercial gain to the city unless you count booth fees with respect to that closure. But it's a good point in that it's something that we did not address specifically. Maybe that a caveat of some sort that excludes the farmers market or other, city-sponsored events, perhaps, might be appropriate.
I personally have a little trouble with saying that for half the year, there's only one Saturday that any organization other than one organization can have a parade. I don't think that's anywhere approaching equal treatment.
And within the policy, right now, it does not say any can have that Saturday. It says that they will not conflict with the farmers market.
Say
But,
that again, it what?
Right now, the policy does not address that parade. It just says there will be no conflict with the farmers market.
In other words, John, for the 26 weeks, if somebody had a parade from like 3 to 5, the farmer's market's not there, they're gone.
Well, and
Is that what you're
my
trying to
point,
point out
my
here?
point was, if I may, Mr. Mayor, is that right now the policy does not give an exclusion to the U of I homecoming parade. It just says there will not be a conflict with the market. The council, though, has the authority to allow exemptions to this policy, such as the University of Idaho homecoming parade, or if there was another parade that the city council felt was appropriate to displace the market and have it move off to Jackson Street or somewhere else, it certainly has a prerogative to issue an approval for that.
So this is a policy.
This is a policy.
And we can exempt ourselves or make exceptions to it on a case-by-case basis,
Correct.
Walter?
if somebody comes and asks.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, to follow up on that, I believe somewhere in here it says this, the city supervisor can. That's in A12, maybe?
It's in there in a couple of places.
Now, two years ago, John, the question came up about the U of I parade displacing the farmers market, which had been moved to Main Street specifically by the city council. The former mayor and myself raised the question with the city supervisor, who had said that staff had said, we're going to move the market. The former mayor and I said, well, wait a minute, the market's on Main Street, because the council said the market's on Main Street. And we believe that the council should be the one to decide to displace the market to allow the parade, which ended up occurring. And then that, and Gary can correct me here, became council policy, and this past year, it just happened. Is my sequence correct?
Somewhat. What the issue with the first year is that there wasn't enough notice to the booth, the
vendors.
merchants in the farmers market, the vendors. So in the subsequent year, at the very beginning, we talked about it, and it was decided at that point that displacement for the homecoming parade was going to be okay.
And that's current council policy.
Exactly.
So does this proposed policy conflict with that, or does it need to be included in this policy?
It replaces that. It
So
says-
every year, the council or the city supervisor is going to have to move the market. Is that correct?
Yes, essentially. I mean.
Is
if you
that what we want to do?
Yeah, unless you want to just say flat out that, U of I homecoming parade will get precedence and the farmers market will be displaced. And that's, again, it's a council policy. What we've tried to do is, and I think the confusion you're talking about, Walter, was nobody had thought about it until about 3 weeks or a month before it occurred, and then it was, okay, what are we going to do? Do you displace the 100-year-old parade, or do you move the market for one Saturday back into the parking lot? After that, we talked about it. So I anticipate that continuing, but we've had other situations where the farmers market's been flexible. They haven't been displaced that often, but hours and that sort of thing. So again, it's a different policy. It's up to the council.